We continue our series of messages that I've called 7 Letters from Jesus. This morning, we want to turn to Revelation chapter 3. We'll be looking at verses 1 through 6. And I've looked at the story of the church at Sardis and what Jesus has said, and I've titled this sermon, Quit Hitting the Snooze. How many have ever done it? The alarm's gone off, and you smack that snooze button. Come on, be honest. Is there anyone here who's never wanted to sleep in the morning? Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, my. We all have been guilty of that. Some of us keep our alarm clocks next to our beds. Some of us use our smartphones as alarm clocks. And I know some people who keep them in bed with them because they don't want to miss a text in the middle of the night. We've gotten pretty crazy with that. Some people, like Colleen and I, we have our alarm clock on a bureau, on a chest of drawers on the opposite side of the bedroom. So when I have to get up to shut it off, I have to get up. But you know what happens? I sit back down on the side of the bed, and I think for a moment, and if I'm not careful, I decide to get horizontal again. It's so easy to do that. Either because we haven't slept well the night before or because we've had such a sound sleep, we sometimes are just hesitant to get up and to wake up. But this morning, we want to talk about the fact that as a church, we need to be awake. This is the 6th in our series of 7 letters from Jesus. And Jesus had John write these letters in the very beginning of the book of Revelation to 7 churches in Asia. Churches, like people, are often in denial of the status of their health. How many don't want to go to a doctor and you don't want to go to a dentist because you don't want to hear what they're going to tell you? Yeah, we put off our appointments sometimes, don't we? Or we say, if I don't know about it, I don't have to worry about it. We tend to do that, but churches are the same way. Churches have a personality just like we have personalities, and quite often churches don't want to know the status of their health. The church at Sardis thought that they were alive, but Jesus diagnosed them as being dead. They thought they were alive, but Jesus said, "You're dead." I want you to notice the progressive decline in the churches to which Jesus wrote. When Jesus had John write a letter to the church at Ephesus, he called them passionless. They really didn't have any passion. When John wrote to Smyrna, he commended them for being the suffering church. But then when John wrote the letter of Jesus to Pergamum and another one to Thyatira, he said, "You're not just passionless, you have compromised." And then John is told to write a letter to the church at Sardis. You think you're alive. You're dead. That's the diagnosis. From being passionless to compromising to being a dead man walking. A church is in danger of death when it begins to worship its own past, when it is more concerned with forms than with life, when it loves the status quo more than it loves Jesus Christ, and when it is more concerned with material than spiritual things. William Barclay said that quite a few years ago. And that's the situation that Sardis found themselves in. I'd like you to turn to the book of Revelation, to chapter 3. Of course, Revelation is the end of your Bible, easy to find. 3rd chapter, we come to the 5th of the 7 churches this morning, the church at Sardis. Listen to what Jesus is telling this congregation. In Revelation chapter 3, I'm going to be reading verses 1 through 6. He said, "To the angel of the church in Sardis write, these are the words of him who holds the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars. I know your deeds. You have a reputation of being alive, but you are dead. Wake up, strengthen what remains and is about to die, for I have not found your deeds to be complete in the sight of my God. Remember, therefore, what you have received and heard, obey it and repent. But if you do not wake up, I will come like a thief, and you will not know at what time I have come to you. Yet there are a few people in Sardis who have not soiled their clothes. They will walk with me, dressed in white, for they are worthy. He who overcomes will, like them, be dressed in white. I will never blot out his name from the book of life, but will acknowledge his name before my Father and his angels. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. The Spirit is saying to Sardis, you think you are an alive church, and everyone around you thinks that you are an alive church. You're dead. Wake up. Two things we want to talk about this morning. One is the signs of a dead church, and the other is the signs of an alive church. What about the signs of a dead church? David Jeremiah painted a good picture of a dead church when he talked about Sardis. He said a spiritual autopsy of Sardis shows the causes of death. First, Sardis died spiritually because it relied on past successes. The body which once was healthy had been neglected. Second, the church died spiritually because it allowed sin to creep into the membership. Herodotus, the historian, records that over the course of many years, the church in Sardis had acquired a reputation for lax moral standards. And third, the church died because it was not sensitive to its own spiritual condition. It was confident that God was there because their building was lovely and their parishioners were well dressed. They were like the people Paul described in his letter to Timothy, having a form of godliness but denying its power. Wow. An autopsy is performed, and the doctor says, you're dead. You're dead, and here's why. In his book, Harvest of Humanity, John Siemens told this story. A German soldier during World War II was wounded. He was told to go back to the military hospital for treatment. When he arrived at a large and imposing building, he found two doors. One marked for the slightly wounded, and the other marked for the seriously wounded. He entered through the first door, and he found himself going down a long hall. At the end of it were two more doors, one marked for officers, and the other marked for non-officers. He entered through the latter and found himself going down another long hall. At the end of it were two more doors, one marked for party members, the other for non-party members. And mind you, this would be the Nazi party. He took the second door, and when he had opened it, he found himself out on the street. Now, when the soldier returned home, his mother asked him, how did things go at the hospital? Well, mother, he replied, to tell you the truth, the people there didn't do anything for me, but you ought to see the tremendous organization that they have. Many churches have superb organizations. The people are busy. They look active. They look alive. But unless the Spirit of God is free to work through their hearts, the church's ministry is earthly and it is not heavenly. Are we alive or are we dead? Are we letting the Spirit of God rule and reign in our hearts and in this church? The church at Sardis was well organized, but the church at Sardis was dead. What are the vital signs of a church? Is it the building? Is it the bodies that occupy it? Is it the bucks in the offering plate? Many ministers succumb to depression when they measure their success by these factors. Here's some statistics that you need to be aware of. 80% of American churches are on a plateau or they're in a state of decline. 80%. The number of mega churches, those are churches of 2,000 plus members, have increased over the last several years. The problem is the number of small churches closing their doors has also increased. The church really isn't growing. It's just a transfer from little church to big church. There's no real growth. We're not out there saving souls. We are not making a difference. Most churches in America have 100 or less members in them. We're not winning the world to Jesus Christ. Bill Hybels, founder and minister of the Willow Creek Church, with its multi-thousand membership, had come to the conclusion that something was wrong. He said this: "We found out we really were not turning out obedient followers to Jesus Christ. We were bringing them in, but we were not growing them up." And Bill Hybels said the Willow Creek Church was becoming a dead church. Can you believe that? One of the most dynamic congregations in the world. But he realized there was something missing. How should we look at church? How should we view the church? What model should we follow when we think of the church? Is the church an organization, or is it an organism? Is the church a machine, or is it a mission? An organization or a factory or a machine functions by a collection of systems and principles. The focus of a machine or an organization is on production. People do their work, and if they don't do their work, they figure out what's malfunctioning in the system, they replace it, or they retool it. They restructure. And everything and everyone obtains value and is elevated by their value to the company. This is what modern thinking is about. Everything functions by principles. Everything functions by laws. And if you can understand and apply the right law to whatever problem you have going on in your life, you'll get the desired result. There will be a solution. All you have to do is look at the titles of the bestseller books over the last few years. The 5 Secrets to, the 7 Principles of Successful Parenting, the 3 Absolute Essentials to Financial Success. We have boiled it down to very topical solutions. Apply these and you'll get the right result. And even Christians take the Bible and distill it down to basic principles. Apply these principles and the church will grow. I want you to understand that we've done it in the church. Here's some titles of some very popular church books. The Keys to Growing Your Church. Principles for Breaking the 100, 200, or 300 Barrier. Capital Fundraising Principles. Proven Strategies for Church Growth. Discover the Law and Break Through to Success. There was a prominent church leader, not Bill Hybels, but another, who was involved with one of America's megachurches. And he was asked this question: what is distinctively spiritual about your leadership strategy? You know what this preacher's answer was? Nothing. There is nothing spiritual about our leadership strategy, because we have applied the rules of man. We have applied the rules of organization. We are not the church. Now, we draw from marketing. We draw from corporate strategy, but it doesn't have anything to do with spirituality. Oh, please, please. We may look like we're healthy, but unless we are tapped fully into the strength of Jesus Christ, unless we have His Spirit abiding in our hearts and we know He is present, we're not the church. We're playing. None of us like mysteries. We like to see how things are going to resolve themselves. We want results. We want things that work. We want to make things work also with a minimal investment of our own time and our own effort. And so we come up with these conclusions within church. If we could only hire the right minister, if we only had the right board members, if we just instituted the right programs, if we would embrace the right worship style, if we had a better location. These all come from a corporate view of life. And the church is not an organization. No, the church is an organism. It is the body of Jesus Christ. Formulas and programs leave no room for the Spirit of God. And without the Spirit of God, the church is dead. And that's where Sardis was.